Hey, this is Ryan. This is Clovis Star Media. It is the 5th of May, it's the 4th of May, 2018, and I've been talking to people about money and happiness lately. We live in basically a third world country right now, and we have neighbors near us that will never see the kind of money we make now or the kind of money we've made in the past, certainly. I mean, we've been pretty well off. Even now, I feel so blessed. You look at the life that 90% of the world lives off of, money-wise, and it's often less than $1 a day. Most of the world, most of humanity lives off of less than $1 worth of money a day. So we've lived in many of those countries. We lived in Puerto Rico, lived in Mexico, and other parts of the world, and close to places that are like that. Guatemala, we see a lot of people from a lot of places that live off hardly any money at all, and yet are some of the happiest people we've ever met. And we've had a lot. We fought hard for it. I used to work 96-hour weeks. I'm not very well educated. I don't have a wealthy family. I didn't have a lot of opportunity in life, but I opened up a lot of doors for me by working hard. And we made over $100,000 a year for many years. And then I got in a car accident and stopped making that kind of money. But our lifestyle really didn't change, because when I was making that kind of money, most of it went into political causes. Most of it went into helping others. We used to donate to food banks, to homeless shelters, and help at Christmas time with the Make-A-Wish tree and all these things. And so, it was rare that we would hoard money or that we would buy nice things. Even when we had plenty of money to do so, we usually just gave it away. And so when I got in a car accident and I lost my job as a robotics engineer and had to recover from my car accident, it was a pretty bad one, we had basically, no money coming in. We had a little bit saved. I had Bitcoin investments, so we had a little bit saved, and we lived pretty good off of that money, and I invested a little bit when I got a car accident settlement from workers' compensation. I got a little bit of money, basically 2 years worth of salary. It wasn't that much, but we still, we did pretty good, because we didn't need to live a very exclusive lifestyle. We didn't have a lot of needs financially. And we've always been a pretty happy family. I mean, we had our ups and downs. We've had some, marital fights, just like everybody has. But for the most part, we've done what we wanted to do. We've seen what we wanted to see. In the last year, we've seen 8 countries in 3 continents. Well, 2.5. I mean, we're in Central America. That's right in between North and South America. So 2.5 continents and 8 countries just in the last year. And if we look at the last 2 years, we've seen 12 countries in 3 continents. So we do pretty good, even though we make hardly anything now, because we don't have to have a very exclusive, very, uppity lifestyle. Last night, I have social media bots, and I've loaded them with some logic to go out and scrape quotes and use them in social media. And one of the bots that I use scraped a quote from somebody named Donald Campbell, which I'm not really familiar with him, but the quote was good. It said, "The direct pursuit of happiness is a recipe for an unhappy life." And I have to agree. I lived in a house, it was $4.5 million house on Lake Washington in Bellevue, Washington. And all of our neighbors, had $100 million or more, worth of assets. I mean, we lived right next to a insurance broker that sold his company for $153 million. He was our next door neighbor. And, him and his wife now are divorced, and he's gone through his second divorce. And the guy that we lived in his house, who we were helping with his stores, we were doing some programming and some tech interfacing for his 3 businesses to connect his 3 businesses together and to the internet, to his website, so that all of their inventory was updated. And he let us live in his house for 2 years, rent-free. He paid for everything. Really nice guy. But he died alone. Never had a wife, never had kids, never had hardly anybody close to him, because he was always worried about people wanting something from him. He had so much money. He had more money than our next door neighbor. He had 19 of these houses that were worth millions of dollars. He owned Marmot Mountain Works. His name was Winlock Miller. But he owned the mountaineering company, Marmot Mountain Works. And I'm not saying anything bad about the guy. I just know that his worry was that people, sorry, we've got birds in our backyard here in Mexico. But his worry, I know, was, and this was a constant thing for him, is that people wanted something from him that he wasn't willing to give. He didn't want to give up his money, and he didn't want people wanting his attention because he had money. So he just kept his distance from people. Never had a wife, never had kids, had very few friends, and would come over to our house, like, where his house really, but where we were living. And he would just come over unannounced to hang out with us because he had nobody. And, he died, he was like almost 70 years old, but lived a very lonely life. And I know so many people like that live these lives that are amazing. Like you would think, gosh, how could they want for anything? They have everything they ever wanted. And they base that on how much money they have. But if you look at their lives, some of them, many of them, have very empty lives. They have struggles, with their family and friends that, cause them unhappiness. And, they're protecting themselves. They're always worried about what other people want from them. And I felt that way a little bit when I had a lot. I had people always having their hand out to me, thinking that I had a ton of money to give away. And so for me, it was just easier to give it to political causes that changed, the world that we live in, so that everybody, had a hand up, so that, the system was better. So we wanted to legalize cannabis to increase productivity and GDP and jobs and everything. I mean, that was a big thing for us. We spent a lot of our free time and extra money legalizing cannabis. Instead of giving it away to people who wanted a new iPhone or, needed a new car or whatever. I mean, we had a lot of people who really didn't have very many real needs, but always wanted money. And so I knew how that felt, like some of these people with millions of dollars, which we never had. We never had anywhere close to $1 million in one lump sum, in our lives. I made $100 and something thousand a year, but I always just gave it away or spent it or invested it, but I never really had a lot of money. But people thought we did, especially family. They always thought we had more than we had. And I always had a brother or a sister or an in-law that had a need or had a problem and would resent me if I didn't help them with it. And I just felt like, kind of, I don't know, the pressure of these things that come from having money, and I didn't like it, and I never have. So I read this anyway. I've looked up that quote from Donald Campbell, and this is what I found. I don't think it has his quote in here, but it's the same sentiment, and it says, "Backfire. Is the pursuit of happiness making you unhappy?" And it says, "Are you happy? The moment someone asks you this question, you start analyzing how happy you are. Am I happy? Am I really happy? You ask yourself. Existential angst creeps in. The more you think about it, the more anxious you become. Studies show the more we think about happiness and how to pursue it, the less likely we are to find it. Valuing happiness may be self-defeating. Leading people to value happiness more makes them feel unhappy, makes them feel less happy. The problem may stem from the way we view happiness. The emphasis on personal happiness, like buying the best stuff and finding the best jobs, leads to too much self-focus. As Palmer Thompson points out, no one ever died saying, "I'm sure glad for the self-serving, or for the self-centered, self-serving, and self-protective life I live." Indeed, there is more to life than being happy all the time. Having a sense of meaning may be the secret sauce to a life well lived. Happiness without meaning characterizes relatively shallow, self-absorbed, and even selfish life in which things go well, needs and desires are easily satisfied, and difficult or taxing entanglements are avoided. If anything, pure happiness is linked to not helping others in need. Bottom line, doing good is more important than feeling good. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "Happiness is not a goal, it's a byproduct of a life well lived." I have to agree with that. What is the meaning of life? What is the end goal if, just consuming and dwelling in self-serving happiness is the result. What have you done to help further the world? What, has changed because of your life? I mean, what price have you paid for the air you breathe? Have you given anything back to humanity? That's the real question.